there are microphones over there and over here. And if you have a question, please go to the microphone. Identify yourself. If you're a student, tell us at what university, where you are in your career. And please ask a question. I get terribly impatient if you make a speech, and I'll probably cut you off. And I don't mean to be rude, so I'm laying the groundwork out right now. We'll start over here. Please identify yourself and ask a question.
We don't have anyone over here.
There's no one there yet. I can't see. Yes, please.
Hi there, Mr. Isaacson. Thanks a lot, Mr. Kalb. Mr. Isaacson, I'm a producer here in the city. First of all, my apologies to my lady friend for showing up late. Second, when I was an undergrad, I came across a book written by Evan Thomas and some other guy that noted Chip Bolin, Averell Harriman, a few other folk about the 6 men and the world they made.
Right.
Who, aside from Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, maybe, and Andy Gross would be the 6 men this day who made the world that we live in? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Wise Men was, as I said, about the creators of American foreign policy. If you were to take the current move of the digital age, it is, I think, towards social networking and mobile. And I think the creators of that new age are Larry Page, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, and our memory. I would put, still Microsoft in there, because I think they're going to do some gaming things. I am not a total expert on mobile gaming, but I think Zynga and others that are creating social networked gaming, the people creating that are, I would consider that. If you want to go back a little bit to what I would say would be the wise geeks of the time, as I say, the twin pillars were Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, but you also have to put in the people who did the microchip, which is mainly Robert Noyce and creates Intel, and the people who created the internet, which are not very well known other than Al Gore. Lick Leiter, Lynn Kleinrock, Vint Cerf, and others. So it's odd, and this is why I'm trying to do, why I want to do Steve Jobs, but I also want to do this next book, that we don't celebrate the creative heroes of our digital age the way we might our sports heroes or even our political. There are more books about politicians who didn't get elected than there are about people who invented Facebook and Google.
I can't quite see what that like. There is somebody there. Yes, please.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Francisco Alvarez, an engineering student at George Washington University. I'm specifically interested in Jobs' technical background. I mean, he was at the vanguard of technology, but his university education was incomplete.
To put it mildly, yes.
In terms of the technological innovation, was he more of someone who knew how to surround himself with talent to fulfill the vision of technology he had, or how much did his own technical background play into that innovation?
I think the former is true. He was able to, Wozniak was the great engineer, the guy who does the first Apple and the Apple II. Steve is a person who says, that's an amazing circuit board, and by the way, you can make it better, and here's how, pushes him to make it better, but also says, you're waving this circuit board around the Homebrew Computer Club and want to give out the schematics to a whole lot of, hobbyists with bad facial hair. Why don't we actually package it, put a case around it, power supply, monitor, keyboards, make it a consumer product? So his field was not for the engineering, but for the creation of a consumer product.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Harris Davidson, student at GW University. So you talked a lot about in the Jobs book about his famous temper and how he was very volatile, but how he was also a very compassionate figure. I'm wondering if he ever got angry with you during the interview process, if he ever cursed you out and how you reacted.
Well, one time he did. It was actually the day that before the iPad, the original iPad was launched, and my publisher had put in the catalog and the database for forthcoming books a cover of the book with the title, which we hadn't really gone over that much, but they just needed a placeholder. I was still obviously reporting the book. And it was a picture of Steve Jobs in an apple, and it sort of said, "I, Steve." And I didn't pay much attention to it, but of course, in this day and age, you put that in an obscure catalog in a database, and suddenly people are blogging it all over the place because anything to do with Apple, people blog like crazy. I didn't even know it was being blogged all over the place that day because I had forgotten they had put it up. But I land at San Francisco Airport, and I'm on that big United Airlines, concourse there, and I take out my iPhone, and I see the thing you least want to see, which is 7 missed phone calls from Steve Jobs. Now, this is the day before he's launching the iPad, so I know he's not calling me to ask how the family is, right? So I hit return call, as you can, just by going like that, a genius of the interface. And the worst thing happens, which is he answers right away. Because usually he can ignore when it says Walter Isaacson calling if he doesn't want it. And he reamed me out from here to Sunday. It took me about a minute or two to figure out what he was reaming me out about, but I had no taste. That cover totally sucked. It showed how stupid and what my bad taste was that I'd even allow that to happen. He did not want to cooperate with me anymore and didn't even want to see me at the iPad launch because it was such an ugly cover design. And I didn't get a word in edgewise for a while. And I'm standing there with the phone in the San Francisco Airport concourse. And finally he says, thank God, because he had asked for no control over the book. He said, I'm not even going to read the book. You have total control. I want you to be your book, not, I want it to be independent. But he said, I'm only going to keep cooperating, because nobody's going to read your damn book anyway. But they'll look at the cover. I'm only going to cooperate if you let me have some control over the cover design. Let me help with the cover design. It took me close to half a second to say yes. Sure. I mean, here's the greatest graphic design eye of our era saying, let me help design the cover of the book. Does anybody have the book? I mean, I'm sure y'all have probably seen it. But I mean, look at that cover. That cover is Steve Jobs designed it. I mean, and it is so Steve Jobs-like, absolutely simple, absolutely clean.
And absolutely magnificently egocentric.
But so anyway, that was the worst run-in I had with him. The good news was I didn't have to say anything during the half hour it happened except for, yes, sure, when he asked me if I'd let him control it. And then he said, fine, I'll be, we'll talk about it tomorrow. And that was it. But the other quick tell, I'm sorry to take up some of this, there were times where I really saw his petulance. And you could just get on his wrong side by saying, it was so sunny today, we took a walk. And he'd say, it wasn't sunny, or something. He would just, so one time, really just less than a year ago, I was coming out there, and my wife happened to be with me. We landed, got to Palo Alto. I texted him saying, I've gotten into town, I'm, where I am. And my wife is with me. And so, boom, he texts back at me, bring her on over, we'll just eat in the kitchen because his family was out of town, his wife and kids. So I say to Kathy, who you know, I say, now, Kathy, be prepared. This guy is prickly. He can be kind of rude. If you ask him a question, he can sort of dismiss it as stupid, et cetera, et cetera. We get to the house, and there he is. He's actually, putting the food in the, not exactly the biggest feast in the world. It's, vegan from the garden, but that's all right. Putting it on, and he starts talking to Kathy, and he's totally charming. For a full hour and a half, he just doesn't even notice me. I try to say something, he's like ignoring me. Tell me what you do to my wife. What do you think of this? Let me show you this new product I'm doing. So Kathy comes away and said, you're totally wrong about this guy. He's the sweetest, nicest, most polite, kindest person I've ever met. I said, yeah, okay. He's good, I said. He's good at doing what he does.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Cecile. I'm a GW exchange student from France. I have a question. For me, one of the main changes that the digital age brought and that you did not talk about is how the internet changed newspapers and TV shows into global media accessible all around the world, on YouTube or through websites, and how some news website decided to open, for example, like I know the Huffington Post opened recently a French edition, and so my question would be, do you think in the future we're going to have media that are more and more global, and do journalists think that their audience is now not only national but global when they're writing?
Yeah, I did try to talk about the fact that I love going to websites, be it from New Orleans or Jerusalem or Bethlehem and Ramallah. So I think that's great that everything we do is global. I think it's trickier than that, but Arianna Huffington is a great strategist at figuring it out and very smart, which is everything is both global and hyper-local. In fact, if you look at what Huffington AOL is doing with Patch, it's doing things that you couldn't do before, like covering my old neighborhood of Broadmoor Central City in the heart of New Orleans in a way that couldn't be covered even by the Times-Picayune, because it's like every middle school sporting event and every new restaurant that's opened in the neighborhood. And so what that allows is a global citizenry to get to the very niche and sometimes local interests they have. So I can be traveling, as I was last week in Sao Paulo, Brazil, but I kind of want to know, everything from Jeremy Lin to uptown New Orleans, and if they're going to open the new library finally and what day it's going to open, because I might go there. And so from my iPad in a hotel room in Sao Paulo, I can be reading a neighborhood report from inner city New Orleans. So it's both global and hyper-local, if you know what I mean.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rob Kimmer. I'm a GW Law alumnus. Mr. Isaacson, do you, in terms of the next big thing, you're exposed to a lot of geniuses through the Aspen Institute and Ideas Fest and everything. Do you think you've met the next game changers, or do you think there's sort of a lapse of time that has to happen between sort of the real big?
Well, I think, you can see
inventors?
the glimmers of the next big game changer, saying, pick a field, but if you want to pick technology, which is, I think, what you were asking, the huge game changer will be voice recognition, which you're starting to see with Siri on the iPhone. Voice recognition, meaning I can say, at Steve's last board meeting, when he submits his resignation, they're introducing, I don't know if you know, on your latest iPhone, you can talk to it, and there's something called Siri, S-I-R-I, which is the program that understands what you say, which is one of the most difficult things in the world. We think computers are really smart, but a 2-year-old can understand language better than, the biggest computer sometimes. Okay. But you've now gotten, as you probably know from your iPhone, the ability to actually have a phone that can figure out what you're saying. And so Steve is trying to stump it at that meeting. He says, do I need an umbrella tomorrow? And it says, it knows exactly where he is because of GPS, and it knows how to translate that. Umbrella to, it says, it's not supposed to rain in Palo Alto tomorrow, it says. And you go, wow, that's pretty smart. He even tries to stump it, with a few other questions. Finally he says, are you a man or a woman? And because it's a very good program, it knows how to do that. It says, they have not yet assigned me a gender. I think voice recognition will totally transform what technology is, because at the moment, you have to physically use technology. You have to go and enter information or get it back. It would be nice to walk into this room and or not this room, it's a little big, but walk into my office at DuPont Circle or my house in Georgetown and say, did the Saints win? What's tomorrow's weather? Can you get Charlie Rose on TV? I'm sorry, Charlie Rose. I can use Charlie Rose. Not a real competitor, for your show. Can I get Marvin Kalb on the Kalb Report tonight on TV? And have it be what's called a natural interface. That will be, I think, the next great breakthrough and will make computing ubiquitous. Computers, they won't be computers, but the digital technology so ubiquitous it'll be like electricity. You won't even think, oh, I'm using technology. You'll just interface with it that way. That's one of 100 examples I could give, but it's probably the most exciting in the next 5 years.
What about a way to end war?
I'll take that seriously for a moment.
I hope so.
Which is the ability of social networks to cause people to change behaviors they don't like, including leaders, whether they be Mubarak or the people trying to stop, I don't know, contraception, you know, I mean, being part of healthcare plans. Or you wrote with your daughter a book about how social movement finally ended the Vietnam War. I'm simplifying part of the book, but that could happen in the digital age at about 1,000-fold the speed. I'm just guessing. And so if people decide that something is really bad, I mean, you looked at, it's kind of a messy example, but the Lord's Resistance Army, you know, and the social media that was popping up around it, that's not going to end that war, and so we don't automatically do it. But I do think social media has the potential both to cause wars at times, I mean, you know, gin people up, but also to stop leaders from doing things that the people don't approve.
I hope you're right about that. We've got about 3 more minutes to go. Yes, please.
I'll answer more quickly.
My name is Brandon Smith. I'm from Utah State University. My question is, you talked about business models being changed with technology. We've got the internet, bloggers, apps, and how those have changed the media outlet and their business models. How do you see people the push for self-publishing, like in Amazon, people self-publishing, how's that going to change the business model for books, and how do you see that playing out in the future?
Well, I see 2 things playing out in the book market in the future. One is that, just as in the music market, you no longer need the big labels or publishing houses. I think that they will serve a purpose. They're great industrial organizations for creating books, marketing them, editing them. I have a great editor. You know, I want Simon & Schuster. But it will be possible for, instead of 20 people per season to publish big books the way it was, or 40 people, you know, 10,000 people can publish books. The problem then doesn't become how can you publish a book, but how do you find the right book? Some, especially with music, it's done through social networks where I'm on, you know, Ping, or I'm on Facebook, and it's like your friends are listening to Coldplay, to show my age or something. So it's finding books in an age in which there are no more gatekeepers saying there's a limited number of books that will be published this year, and then we will advertise them and get book reviewers at the New York Times to review them. The second thing that happened is we're still pouring old wine into new bottles. My Steve Jobs book gets poured into electronic form for your Kindle and your iPad. My daughter is creating books that are made for the digital platform, meaning they embed everything from video to audio to let's drill down deep on how the iPad was designed, or let's go off on a tangent to find out what Wozniak did after he left Apple. So you can have a book that is not made to just, you know, as a narrative that was made for paper, poured into a digital form, but something that's very interactive that might allow people to say, I'm going to annotate Walter's book. I was actually at Next Computer in the late 1980s, and here's what he did when he designed that box. And so you can get my book with also many people's annotations. There's a million things we can do with creating a new form of content created for this digital age, more than just many more people writing traditional books and pouring them into electronic format.
We've run out of time, but I'd like to be fair and try to get one more question in.
Said I'd be short, and
No,
I can't.
one more question, please.
I'm Rachel, and I work for NPR, which I was sorry not to hear you mention as one of the examples of great journalism still going
It
on.
is an example of great journalism and great shows.
Yeah, I agree. Which
No, I mean, it's not just they have good stories. They have wonderful shows, from All Things Considered to This American. You know, it's
which
just
I can't take credit for. But
Yeah.
my question is, what do you think the skill or skills that aspiring or entry-level journalists would be best served to be learning right now to
Same
not only get a
skill-
job but to be innovative, like you
The
said?
same thing that Walker Percy told me, the novelist I mentioned from Louisiana growing up, which is the world's got too many preachers. For God's sake, be a storyteller.
story.
There's so many people blogging in their pajamas right now, preaching at you about what you should think about something, and not many people going out saying, let me take long walks with Steve Jobs or whoever it may be and tell you a story. And I think reporting and storytelling and narrative storytelling is going to be the most important talent in a world in which people bloviating on blogs with opinions is out there for free in a zillion different sources, we'll place a premium on things that actually got reported, which will bring us back to the quality journalism that both you, the show, and the Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation help support. So thank you, Marvin.
Very, very much, Walter. Thank you. Thank you.